Everyone, it's very easy to get caught up in this straw man of who is in the financial independence community. This idea that this is for 20 and 30-year-olds that never made any financial mistakes and have been saving a disproportionate amount of their income basically since they were responsible for their own adulting. And I think we know now increasingly, as opposed to maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't think it was even true then, but this is for everybody. And disproportionately, the people that are finding this are people that have had a wake-up call and realize, I don't want to wait another 10 years to get started. And people have that wake-up call at every age. And the point being, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about this more, is it is not too late to get started. But you have to get started. You have to start. And so that is Amy's story. Amy Blacklock is the founder of Life Simplified and Women Who Money. You can find her at lifesimplified.com. And this is exactly it. She had this wake-up call in her early 40s and was effectively starting with no net worth, right? And made massive grounds to reclaim decades of her life. And this is a story about flexibility, adaptability, the idea that you don't know what you don't know until you get started, and it's never too late. Welcome to Choose FI.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, guys, excited to dive into this episode. Lots to cover today. The biggest thing here, this word of encouragement, it is not too late to start. You need to get started. And to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I am doing quite well. And yeah, this story should be fantastic. Amy's background, Amy's story has a little bit of everything. And like you said, it is never too late. I think we cannot say this often enough. Clearly, the financial independence movement is not about, hey, get everything right from the time you're 20 and retire at 33 and sail off into the sunset. That's just not something that relates to most of us. We've all made mistakes. We never learned this stuff growing up. And I think we all find it at a different spot. And I just love how Amy self-describes as a trier of many things. She's had so many different careers. Her background's fantastic. She owned a specialty cafe, a personal training studio. And I love the tagline of her site. It's simplifying finances, fitness, food, and fun. It just doesn't get better than that. So Amy, with that, welcome to Choose FI.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, I wanted to talk about this sentence that was on your website, and it's this kind of this question. And I think all of us, it's an internal monologue that all of us hear. It says, do you ever look around and you wonder, how do other people do it? How are they driving that new SUV, living in that large home, dining out multiple days a week, while, this is the important part, while also saving money for their kids' education and retirement? And you basically said, I used to wonder that. So if you used to wonder that, what does that mean for you now?
Now I know that most people don't do it all. You need to select for yourself what's important and then appropriately learn how to save your money, allocate your money, save for your retirement, but to choose to spend wisely on what is important to you, what matters most to you.
Well, let's reverse engineer that, because that's effectively talking about your money story, your identity when it comes to money, your value proposition, and the fact that you basically used to say, how are they doing this all, without realizing that they simply weren't, meeting their financial goals. They were trading it in for effectively more stuff. What did that mean for you in terms of your own personal financial trajectory before you realized this?
So previously, I was one of those people that was trying to keep up with everybody else, trying to keep up with the Joneses, thinking that I needed to have it all, to be happy. So I had the big house, almost a 4,000 square foot house, drove an SUV, went to a Jaguar from there, sports car from there, put kids in private school, tried to have all the latest gadgets, all the latest things, but wasn't saving for the future, was not putting money away for college educations for the children, was saving a little bit for retirement and 401ks, but very little. Wasn't really looking at the future because I was spending all that was coming in. And I remember one day hearing something on the radio about saving for retirement and how people were going to need $1 million or more. And I thought, how in the world are we ever going to get there? It just didn't seem possible because all the money was being spent. Fast forward, the relationship I was in ended up, divorced. So that was one of the things that's also not traditional about me is I have a divorce in my background. And I was trying to rebuild my life, starting over, ended up remarrying, and my new husband and I, same thing. We were spending a lot of our money. We were saving a little bit here and there for 401ks, but we were spending most of it. And I knew that something had to change. I didn't want to keep staying on that treadmill because, retirement was getting closer. While we were only in our 40s, we were a lot closer than, and previously. So I decided to start looking at what other people were doing. How were they? Because it appeared like everybody else was accomplishing everything. Like they were able to drive that new car, live in that house, and save for the future. What I didn't know is that most people were just like me. They were trying to keep up with everybody else and not necessarily saving for their future.
Yeah, that is such a valuable realization when you come to that. And I always had that same thought of how are they all doing this, right? Because you just look at people's salaries and you just like, I even tried to do it from the quantitative part of like, wow, okay. I think even if somebody made a good bit of money, 2-income household, and then you take out, like you said, the private school, the fancy SUV and Jaguar, the travel, the big house, all this stuff. And then where does saving for college, saving for retirement, where does all this stuff come in? Like, how could it conceivably fit in even a $200,000 income, right? And how few people have $200,000 incomes? Like, I actually had those thoughts in my early to mid 20s. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like, either there's something that I'm just missing, or maybe it's like the emperor has no clothes type scenario. Like, maybe people are just getting into debt. That being said, I'm curious if you could put yourself back in the Amy's shoes of the private schools and the Jaguar and the SUV and the 4,000 square foot McMansion. Like, was it ever an intentional decision? Was it, this is what my friends are doing, this is what I aspire to be, this is what it looks like to be wealthy? Like, can you put yourself back psychologically in that time period and talk us through, like, what led you to those decisions?
So I was raised by a single mom, lower middle class income. So I grew up always wanting more because I was surrounded by friends who came from 2-parent homes, who had houses and the clothes and all that in high school. And so I think it came from a position of feeling like I was lacking, like I didn't have things that everybody else had. And I thought I deserved them, right? I worked hard once I graduated from high school, got a full-time job, always worked hard and thought I deserved those things. I deserved, what everybody else had. I'm not really sure why I thought that, but, I did. And so my husband got a position at a Jaguar dealership. And that was kind of the beginning of the end in some ways, in the sense that we were surrounded by people driving these fancy cars, and even the employees. I just remember thinking all the other employees were falling into that trap as well. Like, you have all these customers who seem to have money, and you think that I fell into the trap of thinking that money equaled happiness, that the more money you had, the more things you could buy, and that equaled happiness. And I just fell right into that trap. And it was, once you fell into it, it's hard to get out. It is that hedonic treadmill. And you're just thinking, I need this. Everybody else has this. I deserve it. I should have that thing too. And so it took a long time to get out of that.
And how deep was that trap? Did it ever get bad for you financially? I know you said you weren't saving for the future, but that's, kind of nebulous a little bit. Like, was there debt? Did it eventually get that bad? Or was it, okay, we're spending everything we make, but it's not worth?
Yeah, we had debt, meaning we had the mortgage, we had, car payments, but nothing, maybe occasionally a $10,000 personal loan or something like that, but never huge credit card debt or anything of that nature. We just weren't really making headway. I think at the time of the divorce, we were maybe 250, 300,000 net worth, including homes and vehicles and all that kind of thing. So it didn't have zero net worth or even negative ever, other than maybe, right out of high school or something like that. but it just wasn't moving forward like we should have been based on, the dual family income, that kind of a thing. So starting over, once I had the divorce, I was probably at about, yeah, I guess it was about 150,000 myself. So we were probably about 300 together and split that in a divorce.
And this is all happening in your late 30s, early 40s. Give us a sense for, this net worth, your age at that point in time.
That was early 40s. I divorced at 43.
Okay. So to put this in context for people, so 43 years old, a net worth of 150,000 in your mind. Now you're doing research and you're finding, for me to be at a point where my retirement future is going to be okay, I need to be get to somewhere around 1 million, maybe more. And I have 150, but I'm making no headway.
Right.
And if you point back to kind of the forensics that got you here, it turns out that you've kind of baked into your life a lot of structural costs that even if you were making good money, it's all just going right out the door. And it's not stuff that you can just quickly unwind. Keeping up with the Joneses has gotten to the point where there's no way for you just to, the way your life is structured currently, there's no way for you just to get to $1 million without change. Is that accurate when you had this wake up call?
Yes, very accurate.
Hey, this is Andrew from the Choose FI team. Hope you're enjoying the interview. We're going to get right back to it right after these quick messages.
So, Amy, we frequently talked about this idea of the awakening. A lot of times, it's kind of been an excuse to talk about it with our conversations with Dominic Cortuccio. And sometimes it's a painful series of events that forces us outside of something that we were just tolerating up to this point because the cost of change just felt too painful. But now with our kind of world falling down around us, we're like, I cannot settle for inaction at this point. I have to do something. So it sounds like that's kind of where we are. You're in a new marriage. You and your husband are likely having conversations about money, but you just said in there, you were still just kind of at steady state. You were keeping your head above water together, but you weren't making progress. So I guess the question is worth asking, what changed? What allowed you guys to really move forward towards this common goal together?
Okay, so I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and previously I had 2 businesses, and I just found myself that's really where I belonged. I wanted to get back to having another business or doing something for myself, but I was stuck in a job that I hated, honestly. That got me thinking about how can I get out of this job? Well, I couldn't get out of the job because I was spending all the money that was coming in. So I started, it was kind of a lot of different things, but I started looking at, okay, first of all, how can we start saving more money so that we could build up, a savings so that I either could look at, starting another business or doing something on our own. At the same time, I was also thinking about, I don't want to work till I'm 67 years old. And my husband didn't want to work until he was 67 years old. How could we get out of this having to work in jobs that we no longer cared about like we used to? So I fell into searching online for ways to save money. And it started just innocently enough. Before this awakening, we had bought a brand new Jeep Wrangler shortly after we got married. It was something that we both had always, dreamed about, was this decked out Jeep Wrangler. We thought it would be, such fun. We bought it. And then 2-3 months later, I'm thinking, what did we do? We just kept ourselves in this trap. So I started researching different methods and ideas about saving money, from, how do you drive your car to save money on gas, to, what can you do in the home? How do you save money on groceries? I mean, just all kinds of things. And it just ended up going down a rabbit hole. The first article that really hit me was, it wasn't on Mr. Money Mustache's website, but it was I don't know, on US News or Market Watch or something like that, which then led me to Mr. Money Mustache, and then just down this rabbit hole of a bunch of personal finance blogs and websites. And it took me 2 or 3 months to convince my husband that, hey, this financial independence thing might be something that we could do, that we should pay attention to, might be a ticket to the future.
Can I ask you a question very pointed about that? Because a lot of people listen to this, even right now, or ahead of this episode, in their mind, they've said it's too late. Like, this would have been great if I found it 10 years ago. Like, did that thought concern you? Did you have that thought? You see this guy that talks about how he was early retired by 30 and said, oh, it's too late for this to work. I'm just curious, was there any conversation between you and your husband about that idea and how you workshopped that?
Obviously, I recognized that I was older. We were older than a lot of the people that were in the financial space at the time. But I still realized that if we made some significant changes, we could still retire early for us. So I finally started to realize that keeping up with everybody else wasn't really getting me anywhere. It wasn't getting me where I wanted to go when I was spending money. But hey, maybe I could try to keep up with some of these people who are actually learning how to save money and retire early. And even though these people were far younger than me, I don't know everything. Clearly, I made a lot of mistakes, but I could learn from these people what they're doing and somehow turn it around for us so that we could at least retire earlier than we originally thought. I mean, we were looking at wait till we were 65 or maybe 67 before we could retire. And seeing people retire in, 10 years, so they're retiring at 30 or 35, man, if we could do it in 10 years, we're still in our mid 50s. That was much better than, waiting till 65, 67.
That is so awesome. Yeah, we could retire early for us. I mean, that is so critical, right? It doesn't matter when you find it. We can retire dramatically earlier than we thought, right? Than we feared, most likely.
Right.
So, I love that reframe of this keeping up with the Joneses in a good way of the FI world, right? We're trying to keep up with the Joneses of the FI world. So I guess my question is, so you found Mr. Money Mustache, you found this market watch, you went into this rabbit hole, and it took you a little bit of time to convince your husband. Like, do you remember what those early conversations look like? Because I think so many of us, that's a question we hear a lot is, hey, I found this and I think it could be life-changing, but I don't know how to get my significant other on board. Do you remember what kind of conversations and strategies, like what that looked like?
I recall a little. Some of it was we're going to have to make drastic changes. We're going to have to cut back on our spending, our discretionary spending, the eating out, going out for happy hours, those kinds of things. What was difficult for him is, that's what he always did. And it just it becomes a habit, right? So sometimes it's a changing of habits. But I think when I look back, sometimes I realize it was ego. Like, I work hard all week. I deserve to go out to dinner. I deserve to buy whatever I want to buy because I work hard all week. We had to reframe our thinking that because we worked hard, we deserve to buy a new computer or buy meals for, all our friends and going out, that kind of thing. So we had to just, really change our frame of reference or what we believed. I guess it was one of the Dave Ramsey quotes really is live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later. That thinking that if we just change some things now, we'll be able to live how we want to later.
I think you're hitting on something that's super powerful for people. And it's this, if a lot of people hear that, there's this tiny bit of them that hears deprivation. Like, you're right, your husband does work hard. He does deserve to be able to go get dinner once a week or twice a week or 4 times a week or whatever
Five
that
times
number
a week,
ended up
right?
being, 5 times a week. And I'm curious, as you guys started to progress into this, was it actually deprivation? And what was your realization about that as you were going through it? And then maybe now with the benefit of hindsight, your perspective on those, yeah, they were habits, deeply ingrained habits. The value proposition now, does he still miss it? Do you regret it? Just kind of give us a sense or a flavor for what happened as you went down this journey together.
Yeah. I guess one thing that really became apparent to us is we were doing these things, yes, out of habit or because friends invited us along or, somebody else wanted to go out. So we would. Or, we saw something advertised and, well, hey, I've got to have that if, this is the latest and greatest thing. I mean, that's what marketing does to us, right? It pulls us in. It wants us to spend our money. And we just fell into that trap. But what we realized is it didn't make us happy, right? And I think so much from my life, that's what I was always chasing, that happiness. And some of the reasons I did the things I did was because I was trying to make somebody else proud, or I thought it was what somebody else wanted me to do, or I needed that in order to validate who I was, et cetera, et cetera. And I think my husband had that a little bit as well. So to answer one question, when we started cutting back on things, no, it wasn't deprivation because those things, they weren't lighting us up anyway. They weren't really meaningful. It was just, like you said, habit. It was just something we had fallen into and doing. When we chose to reevaluate where our money was being spent, how we wanted to live our lives, we were more mindful about a lot of things. And it just is dramatically different today than what it was 9 years ago.
Yeah, and you use that word reevaluate. And I guess I'm just really curious about how you guys came together as a team, right? Because what you're describing is really drifting, which so many of us do, right? We think life is going great. We're maybe not saving any money, but we're going out to dinner with friends, like you said. We're buying these cars. Everything seems to be fine. But again, something's missing because, like you said before, we fell into this trap of money equals happiness. And what's implied in there is that stuff equals happiness. But then you get 40 odd years into life and realize, oh, wow, this actually isn't making me happy. It's not making us happy. How did you overcome that, I guess, individually and together as a couple? Because, that's not easy to unwind 40 years of this thought process. Like, I'd love to hear this because this is the meat for people. There's so many people out there listening to this in your exact situation. Like, they would love to make a change, but they don't know where to start, both internally and with their significant other. And it would be amazing, like, if you can recollect just a couple of little things that you guys did that you thought were especially impactful.
For us, communication. Because we had both been through divorce, a big reason for both of our divorces was lack of communication in prior marriages. So from the very beginning, we knew that we needed to build a foundation where communication was essential. So we just talked about everything, and we still do today. Very good communication between us. So back then it was talking about what we wanted our lives to look like. And that was hard for him at first. And honestly, I really didn't know what I wanted my life to look like. I still joke sometimes today that I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, because life is just, it's huge. There's so much out there. There's so many things we can do. There's so much to learn, and it's ever changing. You never know. Like this year, right? Who knew we would be in a situation like we're at? So just a lot of communicating, trying to frame what we thought we wanted 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and then looking at how we were living, 5 years ago, how we were living, was that going to get us to where we wanted to be? And realizing that, no, it wasn't. So it was just a lot of back and forth communication of where we wanted to be down the road.
So this is like, if we just continue this thought experiment together, we find you and your husband, let's say that you're both in your early 40s, you've both accumulated a similar net worth, maybe 100 to 150,000 each. So that would kind of put you roughly right around $300,000 in your early 40s combined net worth together. But you've also starting out, it's time for a new car. And you both are starting out with a little bit of a hedonic treadmill. So you've got some structural expenses that even at this point, you're just now starting to question, but you didn't come into the marriage questioning them. It was just, we need to quickly rebuild so we can have that level of stability that we're used to before. And so now, in your 40s, you're starting together and you're having this wake up call. You found the concept of financial independence. You've identified, we can't retire early in the sense that, you're hearing about from Mr. Money Mustache, but we can retire early from us. We could chop, 5 years off, maybe 10 years off of our projected current retirement date. Give us a sense, after you kind of did some calculations, after you understood the math and after you understood what you had control over, what sort of goals you were able to set for yourself. And then maybe as a natural follow-up, what you did to enable yourself to go from no room, no margin, no bandwidth, no progress to, you're talking to us now as someone that's kind of done better than expected.
Sure. So I found the FI movement. We married in early 2013, found the movement in the middle, like June, July of 2013. I was pretty much on board right away, but didn't make any serious moves financially until getting John on board. So it was towards the end of 2013. And I went by the 25 times expenses rule. Now, knowing that retirement spending was going to be a lot different, I was guessing, frankly, a lot on what we were going to need. But I was looking at, around the $1 million mark, probably a little bit more is what I was thinking we would need. So I saw, people were doing it in 10 years. So I thought, okay, we picked a date of 2024. And to have a little bit of a meaning, I picked Financial Independence Day 2024. We were able to not only cut some expenses, by getting rid of the newer vehicles that we had and purchasing older vehicles that we still drive today. Saved us some money. We refinanced our mortgage to a 15-year mortgage that saved us a considerable amount of money. We started using coupons and eating out less and, making all our lunches at home. I mean, my husband used to eat out for lunch every day. So he stopped that. He started brown bagging it every day. All those little things added up a lot, and we were able to save a lot of money. But we also both changed jobs twice. I went from below $50,000 a year to eventually, when I left my job in 2018, I was at $84,000 a year. So pretty good, significant jump for me. And my husband, he was about 92,000, I think, originally, and he eventually got into the six figures. But he was laid off this March and had to take a new job, which is back down into the 90,000 range. So, great incomes, but nothing huge where we were never making 200,000 a year together. But that jump in income, helped us a lot. And the markets, of course, have been phenomenal. So we were able to cut our timeline down considerably. And technically, we consider ourselves FI in 2019. So yeah, about 6 years. And now I no longer work. As I mentioned, I left my job in 2018. I shouldn't say I don't work because I work a ton with the websites, but I don't earn any income. Let's put it that way. And my husband is still working. As I mentioned, he was laid off in March. It was not due to the pandemic, but it was right at the same exact time. So finding another position was a little tough. We did think about him just retiring at that point because on paper, it looked like we could. We thought we would be set. However, it was a scary time, right? It was a scary time for a lot of people. I guess everybody, probably in the entire world, as far as that goes with the pandemic. So we decided that maybe he should still keep working to build a little bit bigger safety net. He was able to find a job again, started working again in June, and is still currently employed.
That's incredible, Amy. So yeah, I just want to kind of go back to this story and dive a little bit into the numbers just to set the stage here for everybody. So as I'm understanding it, you found FI in mid 2013. Sounds like you had about a $300,000 net worth at that point combined, and you're in your early to mid 40s. Is that roughly?
Yeah, okay. Mid 40s, correct.
Okay, cool. So, just thinking about like from a post-FI perspective, like if you earned 8% on that money, you would expect it to double every 9 years. So let's say 18 years later, you'd have about 1.2 million, but that's 18 years, right? So you're talking maybe 16 or 17 years to hit that 1 million mark, let's say. And you did it in roughly 6, which is remarkable, right? I mean, that is truly, truly remarkable. So, just so everybody is aware, that's the power of these changes, right? Like that's the power of, you said, just unwinding this lifestyle of money equals happiness. It's right. Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible to see. So that's kind of the background. And then I did want to ask, you said you changed jobs multiple times. Your income went from 50K to 84,000, which is almost a 70% increase, which is crazy. How did you do that? Is there anything people can take away from that? Were there negotiation tactics? Was it getting new skills, reskilling, if you will? Or, talk us through how you had such a dramatic increase in your income.
It was a combination of things. One was that I actually earned my degree at the age of 45. So I had started going to community college, late 20s, early 30s. And went for a couple years, then would stop, and then would go back, and then stop again. And finally, at about 40, I said, no, I want to earn this bachelor's degree. So I transferred to a university and kept going part-time while I was working full-time, and eventually earned my degree in December 2012, so when I was 45. And that gave me confidence, I guess, to try and find a better paying position. Really what both positions, though, new positions I got were from people I used to work for previously. So the power of the network, right? I think that's something that sometimes we don't give enough credit to, or we don't use enough. But, and they actually reached out to me. So again, it was being a good employee, being a hard worker, and then, keeping my skills updated and staying in touch with people on LinkedIn. Because of that, people reached out to me and asked if I was interested in a new position. But then, yes, that's where then the negotiating came in, was when I then interviewed for those positions. It was, okay, well, in order for me to make a move, I'm going to need this. And so I asked for more. And the first position I took, I think I increased my salary. It was not quite 10,000. But then for the next one, I thought, okay, now, I'm going to see what I can get. And so then I asked for a considerable jump for the next position and secured that.
How did you price your value? What industry were you in, and how did you price your value to make you confident that you could ask for such a bump? With the same company, a lot of these happen when you move from one company to the next, but to do it kind of with the same company is impressive.
I'm a trier. I do a lot of different things. So I have a background in human resources. I was an executive assistant. I did some project management, but I was in the automotive industry working for some engineering firms, and they pay pretty well, especially in the Metro Detroit area. So the first move I made was to a position outside of the automotive industry. And that was working for someone I used to work for many years ago, but I became his executive assistant. He was the chairman and founder of a company. And he had reached out to me to see if I was interested in coming to work for him. And so in order to make that move, I asked for an increase in pay and did that. I only was with him for a short period of time when somebody from the automotive industry reached out to me at another company and asked if I would be interested in working for them. And that was for a project management role. And so I then moved back into the automotive industry for a sizable increase.
Gotcha. So now you're doing your research on the pay for project management in this field. What was the most valuable? Was it using something like a Glassdoor or salary.com? Was it reaching out to other people that you knew that were in the space? Was it Google searches? You had to know that this role was in this range. I'm just curious how you put together your request.
Yes. Glassdoor was big. And then LinkedIn. I used LinkedIn a lot at the time. I think at the time I had even upgraded or got the free offer for the premium version of LinkedIn and was using that a little bit even to see what other positions were paying.
Very, very cool. So I'm curious, if you were to kind of look at your skill stack or really some of the traits about yourself that you feel like were really particularly useful for you, be able to, one, have this mindset shift, but then two, get the outcome really ahead of schedule. What do you attribute this success to? Was it the fact that you're adaptable, that you're always learning? Just give us kind of a sense for like that person that's saying, is this really possible? Is this really replicable? Like, where should I lean in and what steps should I take going forward? What would you say to them?
I think first of all, you have to believe it is possible. It is possible. It is never too late to start. Even if you're 55, start today. It's not too late. If you want to retire, before you're 65, you know what? Frankly, so many people out there that I worked with at the last position thought they would never retire. They were just, I'm never going to be able to afford to retire. I'll be 70 and I'll still be working here. And to me, that's just it's a sad way to look at things, but it's just pessimistic. I just don't believe that that's true for people. I think you can make changes and start today to retire early for you. So you got to get started. But then, yes, you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to embrace fear and just go for it. You have to give up your, okay. One of the biggest things for us was giving up the ego. You have to just be like, you know what? I could learn something from that 25-year-old. I could learn something from that 30-year-old. I'm not too old to learn from other people. I'm not too old to sell my Jaguar or my Jeep Wrangler and go to a Ford Focus. I'm not any better than anybody else in this world. And, what's that saying? Everybody puts their pants on, one leg at a time. We all do things the same way. You know what? I need to stop worrying about what other people think. And I need to realize that stuff, isn't going to make me happy. What's going to make me happy is having my family safe and secure, having myself safe and secure, and being able to have a retirement where I'm not having to rely on my children or have to go, what does everybody say, go to Walmart to work. That's what's going to make me happy, is making some changes that weren't really sacrifices, just changes to have more options later.
And I want to point out like the financial situation. I think this is really important for people to see how replicable this was. You made amazing progress. But I think that there's many 40-year-olds that are saying, okay, net worth in the low six figures, $100,000 net worth, 200, 300,000. That feels kind of in the range of where we are now. Dual income family making somewhere in between 50,000 to 150,000. Dual income family. Okay, I see the pieces. I can see that range. I could probably do a version of this. And you're right. So those individuals, you have some net worth. It's not necessarily where you want to be, but you're like, how can I split the gap? Let's say $1 million is my number. Let's say 850 is my number. Let's say 1.5 is my number. All right, I have this goal. I understand how financial independence, the math there. I've listened to some of the episodes. I have an idea for what my number needs to be. What do I want to make these changes that you just pointed out on? My structural expenses, what have I just taken for granted? We're eating out every single day. We don't even enjoy it anymore. It's just what we do. What if we just dialed it back? So when we did go to a restaurant, we appreciate that this is actually a big deal. This isn't just a structural cost of our life. This is a choice we made. It's not a habit we don't question. Then you get rid of the car payments. We don't need it. That's not who we are. We don't need to keep up with our neighbors. We don't have to do this to have our jobs. We've kind of let these brand new cars maintaining the car payments steal our future away from it. We're going to have paid for cars, and we're going to look at every other structural expense. And we're going to analyze those. So inevitably you do this, and you're going to be able to find 15, 20%, 30% of your life. If you've never questioned drift and you're finding yourself in your 40s, there's 30% that you can cut without missing it. In fact, it might actually allow you to enjoy the 5 or 10% you inevitably add back, because now you actually appreciate this is a choice that we brought it back. So now you've baked in this additional savings. Now you're taking advantage of your pre-tax buckets. You are making $130,000, you and your spouse. You weren't taking advantage of any of your pre-tax vehicles. You're just getting hit at a high marginal tax bracket. And then your money that's coming back after the tax is then all going to the payments on your stuff. You've eliminated the stuff that you weren't using. You've eliminated the ego that was driving most of the costs. Now you actually have space to start maxing out your tax advantage vehicles. So now immediately you're looking at being able to put $25,000, $30-something thousand into pre-tax vehicles. The market has your back and it's carrying you forward over time. And then you start looking at incremental, what else can we do? You're looking for ways to get raises. You string together 5 of these years together, 6 of these years together, you're going to be ahead of where you think you are, especially if you're still enjoying the process. You're still leaning in, you believe that I can be adaptable, I can make change. Does that feel somewhat similar to what you and your husband personally experienced, Amy?
Oh, sure. Most definitely. Initially we made a lot of cuts. Maybe we went too far at one point, but then, yeah, we did add some things back in. And then, yes, we enjoyed them more. He loves craft beer. I've even liked craft beer. So occasionally, we go out and have some craft beer, and occasionally we can go out and eat. But now we choose to because, yes, it's something we mindfully want to do versus just habit or, not wanting to cook. And like Brad's family, cooking at home is so fun and rewarding, and it tastes better, right? And you don't pack on the pounds that eating out tends to do. So yeah, we found that we just restructured our life to now enjoy the things where we spend our money.
Yeah. No, that's great. And you said you got to that point where you cut too much. How did you know you were at that point, and what did you add back? What did those conversations look like at that point? Because clearly you don't want to get into deprivation, right? Because nothing good is going to come from that. So how did you get to that point where you cut too much?
I think it was when we realized that we hadn't ate out in 6 months, then it was like, wow, what are we doing? Maybe we're not enjoying life enough because we're trying so hard to get to that magic number. I'm not sure I don't recall what made us wake up to that exactly, but it was just kind of thinking back sometimes that, hey, maybe we are being a little too cheap. I think it might have been something my daughter said to me, and I don't recall, sorry, what exactly it was, but my kids are 27 and 31 now. So they're living their own lives, they're spending their own money. And I think it was just something that she said one time about us not spending money that probably hit me a little funny and made me start to think about, maybe we're being a little too tight.
What do your kids think about the financial independence life and path that you've taken on now?
My daughter is, so she's married and has 2 children of her own now. She's not really all about it. She's discovering on her own. They're still in that stage of wanting things and, accumulating stuff, I guess. My son, who's the younger one, he's more like me. and financially minded, but he is still enjoying life too. I'll just put it that way. He's saving and has money put away, but he moved to California a couple of years ago, and he's enjoying himself out there. Let's just put it that way. But he's doing well.
Cool. So, you've said a couple times retire early for you, right? And that money doesn't equal happiness. Well, you're at this point now where you are at 5. And I'm curious, I know you said before, happiness, you talked like in broad strokes, family safe and secure and a retirement that isn't relying on your children or having to work at Walmart, but, kind of really in the like a granular sense, like what does happiness look like to you now that, you've realized it's not about stuff, it's not about money. What does happiness look like? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah. So right now, happiness, it's flowing, right? It ebbs and flows. Sometimes, my happiest moments are with my grandkids. I have 2 grandchildren now, and, they just light up my world. And so family, of course, is a big part of happiness and spending time with them. Another part of, what makes me happy is, as I mentioned, I work a lot right now. I own a couple different websites, but Women Who Money has been my passion project with a business partner. And her and I do not take an income from that project. Everything is put back into the project to, keep it growing or whatever. But I work harder on that than I think I've ever worked on anything. And it's because I feel like we're helping other people and spreading information that people need. And that to me is happiness. I get a lot of joy out of that. So maybe it's that purpose thing that once you find like a purpose, it just lights you up and you just want to keep going on that.
I can appreciate that, certainly. And why don't we just give you a second to talk about Women Who Money? So let's set the stage here. You created your initial website was lifesimplified.com, and it was a blog, and it was also you sharing a little bit about what you were doing, the actions that you were taking, and then continuing to highlight how important it was for people to take action on this general idea. But you've been doing that for several years, and then now you started this new project, Women Who Money. And I'd be curious, because you just described this as this is my purpose, this is my calling. You're doing this with your business partner. Tell me, what is the purpose of this website and who would benefit from it?
Sure. So we started the website to educate women on personal finances, primarily because what we were seeing out in the space at the time was so many blogs and websites built by men. And, there is a difference, obviously. And so we wanted a safe space for women to learn about personal finance from a female perspective, where it wasn't the typical males. However, the site is kind of morphed a little bit, and now we have a lot of readers who are male. I'd say about 40% of our audience is male.
Is
So
that true?
I know. So it's not just women that come to us, and maybe it's a little less than that, but it's around that. We do
Wow.
have a big audience that way. So we started the website leveling our content. So we knew that, okay, first of all, not everybody is on the same level of knowledge, right? So we tried to level our content for somebody who might be brand new to the personal finance education, not necessarily by age, but just knowledge. I mean, there are, many people, 50, 60 who know very little about personal finance because their husbands maybe always took care of the finances. So we leveled the content for like a beginner, intermediate, and more advanced topics. And it's just snowballed. So now we have over 400 articles on the site educating people on anything from saving money on groceries to estate planning to real estate investing, index funds, ETFs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that, Amy. And I'm on the homepage right now and I'm seeing, these different tracks, right? 100 level novice, 200 level intermediate, 300 level advanced. I mean, that's really cool. It's a great idea to meet people where they are.
We're trying.
All right. So I guess for our audience, people listening to this, they want to follow up with you, find out more about your story, connect with you and your content. What would be the best way for them to do that?
They can find me on lifesimplified.com, Amy at lifesimplified.com. I'm also on Twitter, or you can also find me at womenwhomoney.com.
Awesome. And I think to everybody listening to this, just keep in mind, it's not too late to start. Embrace change instead of fearing it. You don't know what you don't know. Keep learning. And most importantly, be and stay adaptable. Life is going to throw you curveballs, but you've got this. Stay encouraged. Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, my friends, I hope you're encouraged by that. Definitely check out Amy's site and let her know that you got value from the episode. And if this idea of financial independence is holding value for you and you want to go farther, let me encourage you, just go to choosefi.com/start. All of our resources is there for individuals that are interested in getting started on their path to financial independence. The fire is spreading, and it's not just 20 or 30-year-olds. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.